Hello and welcome to the 8th module of the unit devoted to Ubiratan D'Ambrosio and ethnomathematics as a creative and insubordinated program in the project of ICME awardees multimedia online resources, AMOR. Ethnomathematics is a reaction to cultural imperialism. Ethnomathematics as a research program arose in opposition to dominant and Eurocentric discourses in mathematics education, which at the time generally emphasized curricula and textbooks developed first by colonized countries and then imposed on local communities during the process of colonization. Over time, as many Latin American scholars were trained in Europe and North America and then returned home, in this context, the emergence of ethnomathematics as a research program began to clash with dominant Eurocentric discourses imposed by the colonial powers in Latin America, Africa, Asia, and Pacific. For example, Rosanori state that we must challenge the view that members of local and distinct cultural groups only develop folkloristic and simplistic procedures, techniques, and practices for solving problems they face daily. Thus, the emergence of the program Ethnomathematics can be interpreted as a reaction to cultural imperialism, which spread worldwide first through the expansion of the great navigations from the 15th century.
Conceptualizing creative insubordination. The reaction to cultural imperialism is related to the concepts of creative insubordination, responsible subversion, or positive deviation, which are similar, if not equivalent, as they relate to the flexibility of rules and regulation in order to achieve the welfare of the members of distinct cultural groups. The concept of creative insubordination was elaborated by Crowson and Morris in 1982 to describe how school administrators, principals and vice principals circumvent or make rules and institutional norms flexible in order to better serve the needs of their students, teachers, and parents. These professionals use alternative and creative ways so that they are able to reach good results for the common good of the school community through the adoption of anti-bureaucratic behaviors.
The concept of creative insubordination arose in the 70s by aiming to make positive changes in public health policies by applying practices developed by members of local communities. Although most of the initial research and investigations conducted were related to nursing practices or the management of school systems, this approach is also applied to any oppressive system. In this module, we highlight and use the concept of creative insubordination, whose amplitude embraces innovative solutions, in this case ethnomathematics agenda and its pedagogical action. For example, Beatriz Silva de Ambrosio and Seri Ispansandin Lopes organized a book entitled Creative Insubordination in Brazilian Mathematics Education Research, which presents examples of the scholarship of Brazilian mathematics educators who situate their work within the construct of the creative insubordination in diverse knowledge fields.
Ethnomathematics as an insubordinated and creative program. Ethnomathematics can be considered as an insubordinate and creative program because it encourages a certain sense of awareness or mindfulness, which may lead to the disruption of the existing order in the school and academic mathematics. The insubordination here is related to the development of and the study of ideas, procedures, techniques, and the mathematical practices that are found in various diverse and specific cultural contexts. In this regard, this program broke many norms and bureaucratic rules of schools and academic mathematics by coming to recognize different ways of doing and valuing diverse modes of producing mathematics. According to Rosa and Ori, the insubordination triggered by this program is creative because it often starts a disturbance that causes the review of rules and regulations of the formal academic mathematical knowledge system by increasing the potential for growth and the emergence of new opportunities for the discussion of the nature of mathematics.
Again, the creative insubordination of program Ethnomathematics recognizes the uniqueness of the members of distinct cultural groups by emphasizing their mathematical knowledge systems, showing them in a dynamic way, and valuing them in their own terms and contexts. In this regard, the research of these practices can be regarded as a position of resistance towards a mindless imposition of academic mathematical knowledge, as it may suggest actions in search of creative and innovative solutions to these challenges. The creative insubordination characteristic of this program contributes to the confrontation of taboos related to mathematics as a universal field of study without any traditions and cultural roots.
Aspects of creative insubordination in investigations in the program Ethnomathematics. Many investigations in ethnomathematics review the cultural influences in the evolution of mathematical knowledge through the study of historical accounts, which helps the analysis of ideas, procedures, and the mathematical practices developed locally, which aims at deconstructing dominant mathematical discourse by offering innovative views about the nature of this knowledge. In this direction, the creative insubordination was used in this process because the norms and the rules used in schools and academic mathematics are inconsistent with the mathematical knowledge developed in terms of the local reality. It is important to emphasize that many criticisms of ethnomathematics are directed towards research in mathematics education that ignores the connection between mathematical academic knowledge and the practices developed by the members of distinct cultural groups.
Much of the criticism is related to deep biases against mathematics discoveries and perspectives found outside of the North American European Academy. This is despite 500 years of exchanges of academics who learned in the global north and returned to the global south to apply what they learned in their own unique contexts. Thus, ethnomathematics emerged in Brazil to bridge this gap between the theoretical and the practical mathematical knowledge. Ubiratan constantly taught that there is a need for investigators to query possible connections between mathematical knowledge developed in a particular cultural context and that practice in the academy. Creative insubordination asks, what is the harm in this?
Contributions of ethnomathematics as an insubordinate and creative program. The creative insubordination of a program ethnomathematics can contribute to the generation of new mathematical knowledge and assists in resolving ethical dilemmas involved in investigations in this area of study. During the conduction of investigations seeking to understand and comprehend local mathematical knowledge, investigators are faced with a set of specific characteristics related to ideas, procedures, and mathematical practices different from those studied in the academy. It is necessary to remind us here that the mathematical knowledge is interpreted in the broadest sense, and that ethnomathematics does not negate academic formal mathematics, instead complements it. This is because the term ethno is associated with the members of identifiable cultural groups, such as national and tribal societies, working groups, children of a given age, individuals belonging to distinct professional classes, and the marginalized and the minority cultural groups.
This discussion shows that there is a need for investigators to mindfully break dominant Eurocentric perspectives of mathematical knowledge so that they can assist a dynamic and inclusive reconstruction process. This perspective aims to reduce disconnections between mathematical knowledge taught and practiced in the schools and academies and their practical use in everyday life. This means that creative and subordinate investigations in ethnomathematics are seen as a responsible way of subversion that uses both theoretical and methodological apparatuses of these investigations to reveal and combat the privilege and the authority that was granted to the dominant academic mathematical discourse.
As well, this approach enables an understanding and a comprehension of how this privilege and authority has influenced the distribution of power in modern society. This perspective also allows an analogous, indeed mindful, use of creative insubordination to conduct research in ethnomathematics in order to start a process of change in mathematics education. This decision-making process is one of the most important components of creative insubordination, and which is understood as a fight against the dehumanizing effects of bureaucratic authority. that may occur in classrooms and in the schools.
Aspects of creative insubordination in the pedagogical action of the program Ethnomathematics. Institutionalized Eurocentric curricula often reinforce the inferiority of aspects of students' mathematical knowledge developed by members of distinct cultural groups. For centuries, beginning with the transatlantic slave trade and colonization, this kind of a curriculum was reproduced in order to justify different forms of domination and discrimination. Thus, there is the need to become more mindful of the dominant academic Eurocentric perspective of mathematics curriculum in order to rebuild a more inclusive and universal sense of mathematical knowledge. Although the program Ethnomathematics proposes an end of colonized mathematics education, there is at the same time the obvious need to teach traditional academic mathematical knowledge in classrooms.
In this context, mathematics as an academic subject must be accessible to members of distinct cultural groups through the development of curricular activities that connect its formal notions and concepts to the ideas, procedures, and the mathematical practice produced locally. In this approach, members from dominated cultural groups also need to have equal access to institutionalized education and should be knowledgeable about all forms of mathematics developed by the dominators in order to survive and transcend in contemporary society. As we have mentioned in earlier modules, Ubiratan D'Ambrosio taught that it is important for educators and investigators to develop an understanding of the cultural roots of the others in order to value the ideas, procedures, techniques, and mathematical practices used by members of distinct cultures. There is the need for us to question the status that the powerful and important mathematics acquired in modern society through a sense of creative subordination, which can be considered as a counterbalancing forces that act on the school system.
Ethnomathematics, creative insubordination in school curriculum. Regarding the program Ethnomathematics as a form of pedagogical action for the school curricula, D'Ambrosio proposed an approach by which the investigation of concepts, traditions, and mathematical practices developed by members of a particular cultural group are incorporated into the math curriculum. In this concept, the study of mathematical practices developed by members of distinct cultural groups can be considered as a resistance position, even a form of creative insubordination, because such practices form innovative pedagogical trends for the process of teaching and learning mathematics. This proposed ethnomathematics curriculum by D'Ambrosio can be considered a mindful and peaceful resistance position, because by using the data gathered from these studies, educators are able to flexibilize institutionalized teaching practices through the context of everyday activities by applying mathematical activities based on the program Ethnomathematics.
Similarly, educators are insubordinate when they trigger processes of teaching and learning in mathematics by applying pedagogical actions that aims to meet the educational needs of their students. The process of a mindful choice becomes creative when professionals oppose the selection of particular pedagogical actions that enable the maintenance of a social status quo through the development of mathematical curricular activities that prevents, indeed excludes, the development of students' own reflection and criticality. In this regard, creative insubordination is considered a responsible supervision process in which these professionals look for gaps in these policies by interpreting the rules and norms in order to enable them to defend the rights of their students. Consequently, these professionals modify, adapt, and flexibilize curriculum policies they believe are unfairly foisted to the members of the school community.
Overcoming curricular colonial practices through ethnomathematics and creative insubordination. The pedagogical action of the program Ethnomathematics helps students to overcome the use of disassociated techniques and formulas that are blindly memorized. As well, it allows learners to develop strategies in order to give access to diverse mathematical representations in a new formative dimension of a mathematical nature. As stated earlier, the program Ethnomathematics emphasizes the importance of the community to school because it seeks to connect school mathematics and seeks the practices developed locally. So, by using creative insubordination in the school context, educators come to value and promote the development of local knowledge and practices developed by the members of their own context communities and integrate this into the formal school curricula. Thus, this perspective provides the necessary balance to school curriculum. Creative insubordination of the program Ethnomathematics because a certain integration of these components that aims at the humanization of mathematics through contextualized approaches to teaching and learning mathematics.
It is important to emphasize here that pedagogical actions in regard to the program Ethnomathematics allows for a more comprehensive and mindful analysis of the school context, because pedagogical practice transcends its physical environment in order to welcome knowledge and practice present in the social-cultural context of the students. It is in the school community that investigators and educators alike can find didactic elements of the mathematical content necessary for the development of a mathematics curriculum. This type of creative insubordination can be considered as a defense against the many dehumanizing effects of bureaucratic authority. Consequently, the objective of this insubordination is to ensure that curricular bureaucracies do not offer a disservice to students. Often, public policies and institutional procedures have relatively few, if any, connections to the local school community.
Next, in Module 9, we will discuss ethnomathematics and STEAM education. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your attention.